While it is true that the sun is vital to the chain of life on the surface of our world, life also exists in places that have not been exposed to sunlight for millions, if not billions of years. Solar rays play a vital role for photosynthesis in plants, but hydrothermal vents provide heat and minerals from below the earth, which through chemosynthesis sustain extremophiles, a term for organisms that exist in extreme conditions. So for example, bacteria, which consume the minerals ejected out of these vents, become a food source for algae, which not only float on the surface water, but can also live totally independent of the sun by these hydrothermal vents, starting a food chain like here in the geothermally heated waters of Antarctica, supporting diverse organisms where sunlight is non-existent miles below the ice. There is a story about a people who broke away from their parent civilization and for whatever reason pursued a new home in harsh, icy conditions. This tribe of humans found that civilization could also be maintained from below by the volcanic thermal springs, which bring life-sustaining heat from below to subterranean caverns, even below miles of ice. The rare video that you are now looking at comes to us from scientists at the Australia Antarctic Division who have sent a robot below the thick ice and have released this footage showing off a colorful underwater glimpse of the rarely seen Antarctic habitat. Upon first seeing this, I couldn't help but be reminded of some of the scenes from the movie Avatar, which was full of colorful blues and pinks and purples. And that's what this reminded me of instantly. New Schwabia, or Neuschwabenland in German, is an area of Antarctica that was explored by the German Antarctic expedition, which discovered ice-free areas with warm, freshwater lakes and vegetation. These discoveries led to a cryptic announcement during World War II by then German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, who in 1943 stated, and I quote, "The German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer in another part of the world a Shangri-La, an impregnable fortress," end quote. While it is widely accepted that the Nazis were totally defeated with the German government's formal surrender in 1945, then Secretary of Defense James Forrestal sent a naval task force called Operation High Jump to Antarctica in 1946 after the war ended, including Admiral Nimitz, Admiral Cruzen, and Admiral Byrd, commanding over 4,700 military troops from the US, Britain, and Australia, consisting of 3 naval battle groups, supposedly conducting a science expedition. The US military and intelligence were apparently invading Antarctica in an effort to locate and destroy the immense underground facility nicknamed Base 211, allegedly constructed by the Germans before, during, and immediately after the Second World War. The possibility that the Earth contains massive subterranean caverns, or is at least partially hollow, and that ancient or modern breakaway civilizations flourish within them, has renewed people's interest in this subject, which still is considered by the media to be taboo, or fake news. But is it fake, or is history about to be rewritten?
How advanced do you believe at this point in time that German technology is? And if you can, comment about the location down in Antarctica and about some of the facilities there.
I want to make one clarification here. Germany, in its European location, is one thing, but the German colony on the South Pole, my point of line of research has been that all behind the smoke screen of the Cold War, for all these years, the Americans and Russians and the Germans in the South Polar Colony have been the best of buddies in the very secretive research of the, let's say, the alternative 3 scenario, Moon and Mars survival and evacuation colonies, or the Star Trek scenario. It's my feeling that nuclear-powered anti-gravity craft has been built for 20, maybe 30 years by the superpowers and used in outer space, interstellar exploration. Basically what we see on Star Trek. It's a reality for a limited number. So, I mean, how advanced is the German technology on the South Pole? To come back to your original question, saucers, they were very well guarded, and the Germans were preparing a retreat to the South Pole, especially after 42, when the guys with the brains in Berlin realized that they would lose the war. Anybody who knew the real industrial might of England, Russia, and United States combined realized that, I mean, what proved at the end of the war that there were 500,000 Allied planes against 100,000 German planes produced. For every German plane in the air, there were 5 Allied planes. I mean, figures that are not very often discussed in the press. So knowing this, as early as probably 42, 43, the Germans started making tremendous effort to move hundreds of thousands of people to the South Polar Colony and to keep the saucer's existence as secretive as possible. Anti-gravity is really obtained by simple spinning of any object along a vertical axis. Simple spinning of a used airplane gyroscope would reduce its weight. It's official academic scientific literature. If it is that easy to produce anti-gravity, if one would not need the fancy science fiction hardware that Bob Lazar is revealing in his film, that our government has been secretly back engineering in Nevada test site by using a hand-me-down alien technology utilizing element 115. Maybe this is a legitimate anti-gravity drive and you can obtain anti-gravity even by this means, but normally anti-gravity is very easy to produce. If it is that easy, then you can couple every existing engine in your arsenal with spinning lenticular airframe and produce an anti-gravity craft, and the Germans did just that. They had piston engines with propellers spinning the craft around. They had Wankel engines with propellers. They had turbojets, pulse jets, ramjets, rocket engines in inboard and outboard variations, custom-made, standard aviation turbojets they were using on the Messerschmitt 262 plane, standard rocket engines they were using for the Messerschmitt 163 rocket plane. Rocket engines probably for the V2 were used for the rocket-propelled craft that could go in the outer atmosphere. The simplicity of anti-gravity. This is probably the biggest argument that the Germans really had these things.
Okay, but then also the reports of bomber crews, Allied bomber crews, who witnessed Foo Fighters and similar disc-type craft approach as they would were in their bomb runs over Germany and France and so forth. The alleged Foo Fighters would be seen approaching the bombers from the ground. They would be coming up from German airspace rather than from above, correct?
I mean, they would be seen approaching them from everywhere because they would come from underground, they would from the ground surface level, they would be hanging on the air waiting for the bombers to come, like glowing Christmas tree ornaments in the night skies of Germany. But they were so maneuverable, they could fast outpace. I mean, they were making probably 2-3 times the speed of sound in the atmosphere. They definitely captured a vast treasure of information from the underground bases in Germany after the war ended. I mean, they had about 300 underground facilities, according to Renato Vesco, that were huge underground cities. One of them, The Mittelwerk complex next to the concentration camp Dora was 2 kilometers long by 1 kilometer wide. We're talking about millions of square yards of floor space, shop space.
Vladimir, let me ask you one last question here on my part. The Germans, with the technological development that they've done, there was certainly some involvement by Hitler in some very strange and unusual things. Do you believe that the Germans themselves had any type of connection with extraterrestrials or alien races during the early parts of their development programs?
Yeah, I've heard this story on numerous occasions. For example, I heard that there was a saucer crash near around Peenemünde, another saucer crash in the Bavarian Alps, which may have been used as an excuse by the German secret elite to peddle this flood of new technological information, this avalanche of information to trickle it down into German economy and industry without having to explain exactly where they got it from. But I do think that the Germans were heavily involved in, they had contact with extraterrestrials, several races probably. And the more time passes, the more I'm willing to accept the idea that basically extraterrestrials have always been in contact with the major terrestrial governments, and especially the secret societies, which are the fifth column for the introduction of a particular extraterrestrial philosophy in our society. The German secret societies like the Thule Gesellschaft, the Vril Society, and numerous others that I don't even know, have all been in contact with different types of alien races. And from here comes this enmity and competition between terrestrial secret societies, which basically kind of support their extraterrestrial backers. By the end of the war, the Germans were working on an antimatter bomb, time machine, and many other bizarre advanced technologies, death ray, and so on, free energy. But the antimatter bombs were as big as a pineapple and strong enough to devastate the whole of New York or London, which could not be done with a small Hiroshima-sized bombs.
Right, but the question is...
so Hitler opposed the use of these nuclear bombs over England or the United States on a very racial reason. He said, we are not in the business of killing Aryans. This was the same reason he told his general staff when he opposed the German army rolling over the escaping British and French soldiers at Dunkirk in, I think, 40 or 41, when they were defeated, and Hitler stopped his armies, allowing the Allied fleet to evacuate these defeated soldiers in England and basically use them for the D-Day invasion again.
Okay, but after the war, or as the war was winding down, it was obvious that the Germans were defeated. Wasn't there a secret cadre of his own Nazi SS that took this technology and took it out of the country before it could be captured by the Allies?
Oh, yeah. I think from 42, 43, the smart guys in Germany had made their own plans that they are about to lose the war, so why don't we just let's work on some escape scenario. So every new technology was tested quietly, low-key, low profile. For example, they tested a greenish-looking radiation, a death ray in Romania, then they packed and crated and shipped everything to the South Pole. They would test it, make sure that it worked, and they would never try it again, and they would move it to the South Pole. So when Admiral Byrd arrived with a huge three aircraft carrier, it's a triple armada descending on the South Pole from 3 directions, they were beaten in 2 weeks and hastily retreated. Probably the Germans had at least one smart move by not using these weapons in 44, 45 on the European theater, but concentrating everything they had in the South Pole theater.
Okay, now if such a technology, or if such a renegade Nazi force escaped to South America or Antarctica and has been there all this time, unassailed by any of the Allies or Soviets, that's really pushing credibility to believe that such a group could still exist on there. What kind of evidence is there?
The rumor goes that there is a large city called the New Berlin.
And why haven't they tried to complete the goals of the Third Reich in the years since then?
Well, not that they have tried, they have completed them. They have produced a master race on the South Pole, according to the rumor. They have cured diseases. They developed genetic engineering to such a perfection that, I mean, the Germans had hybrids between humans and animals 50 years ago in the concentration camps. So where are they now after 50 years? But this is a research that goes on hand in hand with the other superpower governments. My feeling and suspicion is that the tall, blonde, Nordic-looking guys that we see so often in the little gray abduction scenarios, they are in Bud Hopkins' books, they are in the UFO documentary UFOs Are Real, the Travis Walton abduction from Snowflake, Arizona, where he confronted a tall, blonde Nordic guy in the big mothership, or possibly a German South Polar colony. These are the tall blondes, in my opinion. I mean, quite probably these are the Germans from the South Pole, hand in hand with the Russians and Americans, under the guidance and tutelage of many extraterrestrial races and the overseeing celestial management centers and power structures that run the whole show.
By the time the war ended, the rumor is they had about several 100,000 slave labor from the concentration camps to work there as slaves. Elite troops, Hitler-Jugend boys and girls to be the seed of the new genetically engineered colony, the boys from Brazil colony, type of colony. Engineers, scientists, SS men, all the 9 yards of a new society which laid the beginning of that new Berlin colony.
So is there a society, is there a group in the South Pole right now?
There is a rumor that that New Berlin colony has an embassy in Washington that is on an unmanned high-rise floor. Between the 19th and the 20th floor, for example, there is one more floor that has no number and no button on the elevator. So to stop on that floor, you probably have to punch a code on the buttons or use some other means. And then it stops on that unmarked floor. The door opens and you have a big sign, New Berlin, above the entrance of the embassy. I was told that they travel on Icelandic passports, being tall, blonde, blue-eyed, genetically engineered Nordics of the Superman type. They travel on Icelandic passports. All the Icelanders are blonde, for, to my knowledge. And they send their kids to Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, basically
Columbia.
the best universities in.
Where is this leading? Where's this going? Are these saucers that we're seeing?
Star Trek? Star Trek?
These saucers we're seeing, are they ours, or are they theirs, or are they something
all of the above.
Completely different?
No, it's all of the above. All of the above, but there is a major component that is built here on this planet.
Are there actual photos that survive the war that were taken of these Kugelblitz and these other flying machines?
Yes, I mean this big collection that from my trip in Germany and Austria this summer, I came with probably about 20 original photographs, some of them in color, of some of these craft, including one negative. Of original negative that can be done, that can be digitized and studied. The most fascinating story that came out of Germany was that not only they flew to Mars with that Gross Honeybull, 70 yards in diameter Honeybull, Gross Honeybull 3, not only that they probably built the SS space station, the Andromeda space station, which was basically a flying submarine. It was built by submarine engineers in the aircraft and the Zeppelin hangar near Berlin, which is 300 yards long. The space station itself is only 100 yards long, so plenty of space to build it there. But the Vril Society developed a unique and very advanced series of craft that started with a Vril 7, which were about 40 yards in diameter. The second prototype was given a name, Vril Odin. Odin is the Scandinavian god of thunder. The crafts were named Vril, and Vril in Germanic language means the life force. Basically, craft utilizing the never exhaustible, always automatically replenishable life force. And then in a book on ancient occult, German occult traditions, they had a chart of the runic characters, and this is the runic character for the life force. So it all drives together. The name of the craft, Vril, the meaning of the word Vril, and the pictorial symbol on the bottom all mean the same thing, the life force. So we were able to decipher this little puzzle here. 17 of the Vrils were produced. Quite probably they were tested quietly, low-key testing, and then they were flown to the German South Polar colony. We will talk about it in detail pretty soon. And these are low-level photographs, the first real photographs of such craft in low-level flights over the testing grounds in Germany. It's probably the autumn of 1944. The leaves are gone from the trees. In this photograph, we can see the head of the pilot through the transparent perspex cupola of the craft. A very steep maneuver. Possibly the craft is moving in this direction upward because of all the edges. These and these edges are blurred. This happens usually with the edges, with the attacking and the trailing edge of the craft. What are those lines underneath? Parts of the drive. In this enlarged photograph, we see an even better picture of the pilot inside. These two dark spots here could be the sunglasses that the pilot was wearing. The craft could go 2,900 kilometers in the atmosphere, almost 2 times the speed of sound. It definitely had exoatmospheric and orbital capabilities. And I have a suspicion that these were free energy craft that did not need any fuel to fly. Once they were started and put in motion, I mean their gravity drives were activated, they did not need any more fuel to run. And we can see low-level flights, probably the autumn, early autumn of 44, the leaves are still on the trees. This visible asymmetricity here, if we divide the craft, it looks like the cabin has been blown backward by a strong wind, or it's kind of a cake melting in our refrigerator, just taken out of the fridge. Bigger craft, the Hollywood 2 type craft, which were 25 meter diameter, about 75 meter diameter tank killers, were also produced. They had one big drive, a ball in the middle, which was a tachyon drive, an electromagnetogravitic drive, which they were calling the tachyon drives. The Thule tachyonators. The Thule tachyon drives were produced on assembly lines. They had an assembly line production of tachyon drives in their AEG and Siemens plants in 44 and 45. So in these underground caverns, they had more than enough space and fantasy and guts to build all these incredible flying machines. Armaments were added. These are machine guns in 3 turrets. On this photograph, we see some of the armaments here clearly visible. Something is sticking menacingly from the underside of the craft. A shot from the underside shows the Luftwaffe cross, either the 4 legs or 4 small machine gun turrets, and something that looks very suspicious, something here that we would see very soon resembles like a tank turret with a gun sticking out. These were really the tank killers of the Hollywood 2 type. They were designed to fight whole tank armies. The skeptics would say, well, it's impossible to, what a stupid idea. It's impossible to put a tank turret on a saucer because it would never lift off. A tank turret is about 10-15 tons. It's alone is 2/3 or maybe half the weight of the tank. However, the Germans claimed that these craft were 100 tons in weight, armed with brute steel plates. They did not have developed at the time the force field shields around the craft that they developed later on. That's why they're relying on brute steel armor. All the wars have been planned, financed, organized, orchestrated, managed, and run by a script like a Hollywood film production is run by a script, by the secret societies and the bankers behind them.
My name is Robert Sepper. I'm an anthropologist. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, and especially to those who donated to Atlantean Gardens, the nonprofit organization that I contribute these videos to. I always look forward to reading your comments. Even though I don't always get a chance to reply, I do appreciate them. I will see you next time.